Good evening. We'll go ahead and call to order this city agenda review meeting. We need a roll call, right? Tonight?
Yes, Commissioner Dollison,
Here.
Commissioner Mercer, who's not present, Commissioner Kinsler,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Yates,
Here.
and Mayor Birdsong, who is not present at this moment.
Okay. With that, we'll have invocation and pledge, and then we'll go on into ordinances, and we do have a few second readings, so we'll hit the highlights of those, any specific changes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. So your first ordinances, this can be 2530 and 2531. This is a land use and a zoning ordinance associated with the annexed parcel, the corner of the intersection of 8th Street Northwest, which is also US Highway 17 and Avenue X Northwest, generally due west of the Lakeside Cemetery. This parcel was annexed in July of 2025, and that petitioner intends to develop this with 3,600 square feet of adult daycare. There's been no changes since first reading. They're requesting to assign neighborhood support, future land use, and commercial highway C3 zoning to the parcel. So no other changes on that since first reading. And that applies to both 2530 and 2531.
Thank you. Any questions on those items, gentlemen? Seeing none.
2532 and 2533, very similar. This is future land use and zoning. This is associated with the parcel that the city annexed again back on July 28th, 2025, located at 500 4th Street East, Juanita. It's adjacent to the city's wastewater treatment plant 3, which on the image you have before you is going to be the developed property to the right of the parcel. Our intent is to use this property for future needs of the Winter Haven Water Department. And the requested land use is institutional. The requested zoning is public institutional. One thing, and there's been no changes since first reading on this, but again, one reminder of this is that 4th Street East, as you see noted at the top of that parcel, basically stops at the upper left-hand corner, or what would be the northwest corner of this property. So one of the benefits of the city acquiring this property originally was to be able to connect 4th Street all the way down to Pollard Road to give us a secondary access into the wastewater treatment plant.
Do we own that piece that's in between the water plant and the?
Yes, we do, sir.
We own that one already.
Future Pollard Road water production facility.
Okay. With Mayor Birdsong has arrived, so I'll let him take the reins back over of the meeting.
Which one are you on?
We're at 9E, sir.
9E?
Yes, sir. So item 9E and item 9F, these are companion ordinances that deal with land use and zoning. This is pertaining to property. AJ, if you could advance it one for me. So this is somewhat the northwest roadside corner of the Bradco Farms property that the city acquired back in 2023. So the city is the petitioner on this and is requesting the land use change from neighborhood suburban and neighborhood support future land use to institutional future land use, and to rezone a portion of the parcel from single family residential small lot and conservation to public institution. This is about 10.25 acres that we're working with. This is generally the upland portion of the overall 370 acres plus or minus that the city acquired. The intent of the acquisition of the total property was to create wetland restoration, aquifer recharge projects that will help our long-term water supply, and the upland portion was intended to be acquired for development of the new water department campus. That'll include approximately a 36,750 square foot admin building, 24,699 square foot warehouse and the associated parking areas on that campus. Earlier this year, the commission had approved work to connect utilities out to this site for that future development. Nothing's changed since first reading on this. And again, both ordinances, the first pertains to land use, the second pertains to zoning.
Quick
got a
question on that
question?
one. So since the first reading, I've actually had some of the residents reach out to me, the ones specifically on the west side of this across the street there. So, and I kind of get their point, and I think they're very concerned, but just so I've got a better understanding so I can kind of properly explain to them what they're going to see when they look out their front window. Will they see a bunch of water trucks and water equipment? There we go. That'll help.
Your parking lot.
So you basically have the entrance is south of the closest residential property to the west there. The buildings are set farther back in. And I'll defer to Mr. Labby as far as what the landscape buffering would need to be along Buckeye Loop Road.
Yeah, so Mayor, Commissioners, there is a landscape buffer required along Buckeye Loop Road. I believe it's a type C buffer between institutional and the residential across the street, which is basically an overstory tree, an understory tree, and multiple shrubs per every 100 feet. However, I would note that the buildings, as the city manager was pointing out, are generally set back between, I'd say, 100 and 300 feet back from the property line. So that, and there's significant land area along the frontage of this parcel. Certainly an opportunity to enhance the landscaping along the front, should the city choose to do that, as it's our project. Perhaps a few of Commissioner Dantzler's trees.
A lot of trees.
Put all 300 right there.
Or a lot of those trees.
Yeah, a lot of them.
I mean, that was actually, I was just thinking that like a lot of the trees could really line that front to where you're actually pulling in to where you think you're pulling into a wooded area almost, and you get past the trees and you're not. So
And I don't know, without knowing that berm requirement verbatim in other areas over historically, establishing berms that build that area up, and planting the berms creates a visual buffer as well.
any runoff, I assume we try to get that to run off out to the wetlands, right? To try to get.
Well, we're still in that preliminary, I guess, creating the design build criteria, but this being a water restoration project overall on the property, it would seem most logical that any stormwater you're capturing, you're trying to retain on site and push towards the wetland treatment areas.
You anticipate the buildings being like metal buildings or typical municipal buildings that are kind of boring, or something a little more Art Deco, a little bit cleaner? What are you thinking?
I think based upon what we're seeing here, and again, this is yet to be fully vetted out and designed, but cost-wise and functionality, metal buildings with some type of lower facade. As you can see there, they're using probably a CMU brick or some type of decorative finish, up to typically 3 to 4 feet high. If you think about, I'm trying to think of a building that's newer in Winter Haven. Tucker Paving is probably the newest structure like that. That is, these are not of that magnitude, but I think that gives you a good idea of what metal buildings can look like now. And certainly we don't want something that's going to be an eyesore given its placement in direct connection to this nature park and water restoration areas. We want it to blend in.
Does it have to be like a hurricane proof, like maybe a relief center for hurricanes, people go and hide or stuff?
It wouldn't be a shelter, but it would be designed such that we are able to maintain operations during hurricanes. Water department, their restoration work is essential. And so being able to get employees in and out of here, if we have to overnight staff, it has to be designed in a way that we're able to do that safely.
Can we get extra money if we make it a relief center? If we're building something? I mean, I wonder if the government, Washington would give us an extra couple million if we turned it into some sort of a.
I can't answer that at
I
this
know,
time.
I'm just throwing it out
Mr.
there.
Naisler.
We don't have a relief center out that area, that part of town.
Are metal buildings actually good shelter?
I think it depends upon how they're built, sir. It's what the wind rating would be. The closest shelter that we have in this area is going to be, I believe, Jewett Elementary.
Oh, Jewett is?
Yeah, but they're typically a block structure, aren't they?
When do you think we might see a proposal? And then this is going to be the go-to at this point. So the existing water buildings and payment buildings and things like that, do you envision those shifting and doing something else with those? How far out do you think we might be before we see something on those?
Mark, can you come to the podium and speak to that?
Good evening, Commissioners.
Make sure the mic's on, if you would, please.
Now it's off. Now it's on. Okay. I didn't quite understand the question, sir. What was it again?
So and this is going to be our main hub going forward. So that's going to make some of our other spots that are associated with billing and water and service are not needed anymore in that capacity. So I was just kind of curious when we might see what some proposals might be for those properties or reuse of those properties into something different.
So we're trying to schedule to hopefully be housed in the new facility by July of 27. Our current admin facility and operations building is down on 401 6th Street Southeast or Southwest. I would imagine that would probably be, after it's vacated, would probably be put up for sale. I know there's some developers in that area that are looking for it. Also, customer service associated over here in the annex will be moving to that facility too. And I'm not sure what that vacated space over there in the annex would turn out to be.
Okay.
Yeah, the long-term intent was to move the utilities operation out of what I describe as the old Hill Nissan Automotive Center there. Just it's not sufficient we have people stacked on top of each other and heavy equipment, in not ideal facilities there. So being able to house facilities all together creates some greater efficiencies for us. Customer service, would have a presence here. Most of what we're doing in customer service now is online and via phone service versus walk-up customer traffic. And certainly creating opportunities for continuation of some level of that service here in the heart of downtown is something that we want to explore, so we have multiple options.
Yeah, and that was really my curiosity, was that 6th Street property specifically, and seeing, what that was, that's going to be a highly sought after piece of property, and we control our own destiny on that. So just anxious to kind of see what that might look like going forward.
When we choose to dispose of that property, I would expect we would do an RFP type process. We own it. So that comes down to what is somebody willing to pay for it and what is the intended end use of it, similar to what we did with Social Security building several years back, so that it doesn't get developed as something that is not truly compatible with the growth patterns and the development patterns in that neighborhood.
Quick question. Do people still come down and pay their water bill every month? Do they come in, bring in checks? And
There's still some traffic, walk-in traffic. That's about 100 customers a day over there right now. Not all of them are paying their bills. Some of them are looking for other places, but others are just have questions. And but right now the traffic is about 100 people a day.
Would you ultimately try to direct them out there instead of try to keep something present?
Yeah, I could foresee maybe a kiosk here to make payments. I think there's a kiosk there now. So the people that are the walking pedestrians that are coming over to pay their bill, so we aren't putting them in any inconvenience. They can still pay from here there, but everything else would be transferred over there.
We're definitely trying to shift people more to the online presence. Some people still, we changed the hours. In fact, we're still assessing those changes. I think we implemented those September 1st of this year. We reduced the number of hours that we have for walk-in traffic next door. Mondays are the heavier days. And so they're, I think, 10 to 3 on Tuesday through Friday, if I'm not mistaken. And that has been received well. Traffic, that has helped direct more and more people to the online services that we have, the chat bots, using technology to make it as easy as we can for folks.
Is that it? All right. Consent agenda?
Yes, sir. So the first item for you this evening, for consideration Monday evening, will be an appointment to the city's Urban Forestry Advisory Board. That board's comprised of 7 members, 2 of which are to be at-large members to represent a commercial and an environmental organization of interest. We've had 2 members depart from the UFAB, so we have 2 vacant citizen member seats. Arlen Arbiter has submitted an application for consideration. And then following review and interview process, Mr. Arbiter was presented to that board as a candidate to fill citizen seat number 1. That term of that seat expires in February 26, at which time renewal for an additional 3-year term will be considered. So this is getting someone into that seat, fill out the remainder of the term, and then likely seek reappointment at that time. We still have 1 more vacancy for a citizen on that seat, and we continue to solicit applications for that. So we're recommending Mr. Arbiter be appointed to citizen seat number 1.
10B?
10B is a interlocal agreement with the Polk County Board of County Commissioners regarding a conservation easement for the Astute property. So in July of 25, the city authorized staff to proceed with the acquisition of what we refer to as the Astute property. This is up on US 17 North before you get to 92 and before the Ford northernmost parcel there. It's a heavily wooded area, somewhat north of Brigham Road and south of 92. About 152, almost 153 acres. Purchase for that is $1.4 million, and we expect to close, actually we closed this week. We closed Monday of this week on that property. So we now own an additional 153 acres of environmentally sensitive and significant property. The county has agreed to share in the cost of that property acquisition by reimbursing the city $600,000 in exchange for the conveyance of a conservation easement over the property. So this interlocal agreement formalizes the shared investment and establishes the framework for the long-term protection of the site through a recorded conservation easement. The county will hold and enforce the conservation easement while the city will retain ownership of the land and serve as the primary land manager responsible for the maintenance, stewardship, ecological management. So this is, part of the process for the county to reimburse us the $600,000 of the $1.4 million that the property was purchased for requires the conveyance of this conservation easement. And that's consistent with what our long-term use of the property is.
So I guess it's just more or less for us to get some money because basically we're going to do conservation anyway. And so
And we had strived to have all this done in advance of the closing. The closing, I don't want to say it's challenging, but it had certain nuances that we couldn't get the conservation easement done in advance of the closing due to the timing of county commission meetings, city commission meetings. So city attorney worked closely with the property owner and the county attorney's office to facilitate this process.
And I just will inform you that the Board of County Commissioners yesterday at their meeting approved both the interlocal agreement and the conservation easement. And I had delivered to my office this morning fully executed originals of those documents. I'm holding them. I'm going to carry them with me to the meeting Monday night. So once you all approve it, you can sign them. And they were executed by the new board chair for the Board of County Commissioners, Martha Santiago. So I had them in hand.
Oh, okay. All right.
I did just want to say this is a significant element. The closing on that property you heard me say during the State of the City, over 500 acres of environmentally sensitive lands have been acquired by this commission in the past really 2.5, 3 years. And this 154 acres is 153 acres is a big piece of that. Next item is item 10C. This is going to be the award of continuing contracts for planning and engineering services specific to airport projects. We released RFQ 2540 in August of this year, seeking proposals from firms qualified to provide continuing planning and engineering services for airport-related projects. We received proposals from 6 firms. The Professional Services Committee finalized the rankings of those firms and selected the top 3, which are Hanson Professional Services, Inc., Infrastructure Consulting and Engineering, LLC, and Motion Design Group, Inc., or MDG. The recommendation for the award of the continuing contract services was posted in late October, and we had no protests received in response. So we're going to recommend that the commission authorize the city manager to negotiate with those 3 top firms the agreements necessary for continuing services at the airport.
Okay.
Item 10D. I'm sorry, did you have a question with that, Mayor Pro Tem?
No.
Okay.
Oh.
I thought I heard a question. I'm sorry. Item 10D. This pertains to the land lease made between the City of Winter Haven and Blue Line Aviation, LLC in September of 2023, as well as the temporary land lease between those parties that was entered into in April of 2023. I need to read through this one because it's a little more complex and has some nuances. I want to make sure we give you the full picture on. On September 15th of 2023, the city entered into a land lease with Blue Line for approximately 2.8 acres to construct a new training facility. This was going to be on the west side of the new terminal, which is just off of 92. The effective date established deadlines and milestones for construction of planned improvements. A first amendment was executed in May of 2024, and it revised and expanded the leased property to grow from 2.8 acres to 4.9 acres. So it just made the leased property larger. A second amendment was executed in August of 24, and it extended the time requirements for construction of the planned improvements on the property for an additional 12 months from September 15th of 24, as well as extending the grace period for payment of rent. The amendment required all planned improvements to be completed by September 15th of 2025. And when we say completed, that means that there would have been the issuance of a certificate of occupancy or its functional equivalent. So buildings are up and they've been certified for occupancy, good to go. So in light of the fact that the construction of the proposed improvements on the leased property were not completed within the timeframes noted in the land lease as amended, and in considering the public benefit associated with the completion of that permanent project, I, along with staff, particularly Mr. Troy Heidel, our airport director, we met with Blue Line Aviation, and I see Aaron is here, who's a representative of Blue Line. Thank you, sir. To consider a third amendment to the lease agreement. So some of the key terms and conditions outlined in this proposed third amendment include Blue Line will be required to begin making monthly lease payments of $2,758.25 beginning on September 15th of 2025. So this past September. And that will continue until the issuance of a certificate of occupancy or functional equivalent, after which monthly rent increases to $5,516.50 monthly and adjusted annually by CPI adjustments. So basically what it says is construction hasn't begun on there. To maintain that lease, you're going to have to pay a fee that is a reduced fee every month until the certificate of occupancy is issued. And once that's done, then it goes up to the $5,516.50. In addition, Blue Line must submit a City of Winter Haven Building Division application for construction, so our typical building permit application, associated with the permanent project on that leased property, and they must do so no later than January 15th of 2026. So little more than 2 months from, a little less than 2 months from today, they have to apply for a building permit to move forward with the project. Once that permit has been issued, and there's not a set time in which that permit will be issued, because there's reviews and there's, requests for clarification and the like, things that happen in a permit review. But once it's reviewed, within 45 days of that issuance, they have to commence construction. So they can't just get a permit and sit on it. They have 45 days to get shovels in the dirt and start working towards the project and proceed continuously. Construction of that project must be completed within 18 months following the date of commencement. So permits issued, have to start within 45 days, and once you start, you have 18 months to get the certificate of occupancy. Upon the issuance of that CO, Blue Line will have a 20-year term of occupancy with 2 additional renewal terms of 5 years each. Failure to meet any of those milestones results in termination of the agreement, of the lease. So if there's not a permit that's applied for by January 15th, then the lease is terminated. If they apply for a permit and the permit's issued and they don't start construction within 45 days, the lease is terminated. Separate from that lease, I mentioned this temporary land lease. So you remember when Blue Line came to town, they needed temporary facilities. So they have portables that are on the east side of the apron outside the terminal. That agreement is extended so that it will now expire upon the issuance of a certificate of occupancy for the bigger project. As that lease exists today, the temporary lease, it's set to expire in April of 2026. Well, if they're doing all the other things, they need a place to be. So we included an amendment to that temporary lease agreement. So in that regard, they'll be able to maintain the temporary lease agreement while they're advancing the larger project. However, if they miss one of those milestones, that temporary lease will expire either on its original expiration date of April 28th, 2026, or 60 days following the missed milestone, whichever is later. For clarification, if a permit's not filed for by January 15th, that temporary land lease will expire April 28th, 2026. If they get the permits issued, and they don't start construction within the 45 days, and they miss that milestone, then 60 days later, the temporary land lease will expire. This will result in an additional $2,758.25 per month in airport revenue beginning September 15th. Thereafter, the monthly lease payments will increase to $5,516.50 being thereafter the issuance of the CO. In addition, Blue Line must pay a sum of $8,274.75 in cleared funds representing the rent for the months of September, October, and November 2025 as a condition precedent to the approval of these amendments. So I'm pleased that we were able to, address the situation that we were facing. It was had good conversations with Aaron and with Mr. Walters and the team with Blue Line to negotiate this out. They were accepting of that, and I believe we have the signed lease amendments that they have already executed for the commission to consider. So, any questions with that?
I have a question.
So, John, you know me, I'm always thinking worst case scenario, of course, if all of a sudden and I wish them nothing but success. I like Blue Line. I love what they're doing, and I just hope they make millions of dollars out there and train a lot of people. However, they're halfway through. They've got buildings coming up, and the bid hits the shan, and next thing you know, everything's come unglued, and we have to terminate the lease. Do we have to buy their assets, or do they, since it's leased land, how does that work with a half-built building?
We are requiring them as part of this land lease agreement to get us the necessary bonds, performance bonds and statutory bonds, as if it were a public project. So we would have something to look to. to collect on and to then finish the improvements.
Okay.
And those improvements would remain on the property. They're part of the real property.
And that's part of the lease.
That's part of the lease.
Performance bonds. Okay.
Yes.
That's it.
That's it.
Thank you. Next item, the simplest one on the agenda this evening. This is travel and training for myself and Deputy City Manager Carnevale to attend the Florida City County Management Association Winter Institute that will be held in the very end of February in Daytona Beach, Florida, part of our continuing education in public administration. Item 10F, this is uncollected accounts receivable. So this is an item that comes before you annually. At the conclusion of each fiscal year, accounts with delinquent balances outstanding for over 1 year or longer are presented to the commission for approval to be removed from the active accounts receivable reports. Our balances for fiscal year 24 include $243,407.67 in utility billing and $14,890.10 in miscellaneous billing, for a total of $258,297.77. In the utility billing, this is obviously associated with water and garbage accounts. The write-off for utility billing decreased by $25,621 over the prior year. Customer service continued to make efforts to collect those outstanding balances on past due accounts and are actively reviewing collection policies with an emphasis on leak adjustment policies, solid waste collections, and close monitoring of payment plans. During this past year, the city contracted with online information services to assist with debt recovery solutions. Again, reminder that removal of delinquent balances does not forgive the debt. So we continue to go after those. Somebody defaults on their utility account, they come back in to open up a new account. If they have an outstanding balance, that has to be cured before they can get reestablished with an account. In fiscal year 25, the period that just ended this past September 30th, the city collected $11,468.92 from accounts that were previously written off. So we continue to pursue that. On the miscellaneous billing, this is billing for invoices, customers for various fees or reimbursements such as damaged property, false alarm response fees, employee training reimbursements. And so staff's recommending the commission authorize removal of these accounts uncollected for longer than 1 year from the active receivable registers. Again, this is a routine thing. Those of you who've been on the commission, we bring this to you every year. We continue to pursue those outstanding amounts.
Any questions? We have no resolutions.
One more under consent, Mr. Mayor, which is
Those are rental use.
the fee
policy.
schedule. So I want to commend Parks and Recreation Culture Director Julie Adams and Scott Eilers and the team for bringing this forward. So Chain of Lakes Park is scheduled to commence full operations on December 5th, 2025. We'll be looking forward to a great ribbon cutting out there, a beautiful facility, world-class without a doubt. Staff's been working closely with our key partner, Visit Central Florida, to confirm availability and schedule tournaments throughout 2026. To finalize that booking process, a fee schedule and facility rental use policy is required. The proposed fee schedule has been vetted and reviewed with Visit Central Florida sports staff and is based on comparative analysis of similar facilities in the area. It's based on 3 categories of users. So we have public events, Visit Central Florida events, which will receive various discounts through years 1, 2, and 3. Remember that Visit Central Florida and the TDC contributed about $12 million to this project. And then we have co-sponsored government agency and nonprofit events that are eligible for a 20% discount. All rentals will be guided by the facility rental use policy that is included in your packet, and this aligns with use policies for other city facilities. It also has some specific additions related to this particular park, such as the prohibition of metal cleats. Obviously, we're dealing with artificial turf fields. We also don't allow any shelled seeds or nuts that in an effort to protect that turf. And you have people out there spitting sunflower seeds all over the place. That has a long-term negative impact on the turf. The conservative estimated revenue based upon the current proposed fee schedule is $355,500 with known booking commitments in year one alone. So this is if you haven't seen it, I can't wait to get you out there when we do the ribbon cutting. If you have a chance, if you're going to Chick-fil-A or Panera, Starbucks, or the Fieldhouse, drive by and just take a look at it. It is world class and will be a destination sought by tournaments throughout the country. I have no doubt.
Mr. Mayor, I will concur with that. I was down there this Sunday and I was amazed. I was trying to get out there and hike or do some jogging, and the gates are closed. So do you guys keep the gates closed at night and open up in the morning, or how does the trail work out there, the jogging trail?
Let Scott or Julie want to address that. The gate system is such that we can close off the field specifically, but Scott can give a little better
So
clarity.
currently the gates are closed because it's still an active construction site. We've had some guys show up and, hitting balls and shagging fly balls out there. So the park itself will be locked until it's actually handed over to us. The trail should be accessible once we receive ownership of it. All the time.
Okay.
The park will be locked.
You can close off the baseball portion, all the common areas of that, and leave the trail open.
And the trail entrance will be on the far left side over by that condominium complex. Is that where you'll enter the trail, or will you enter the trail through the park?
Yeah, so on the northeast corner where you have the parking lot behind Chick-fil-A and Panera, there's an access to the trail there. You can also access it from the southwest.
So you'll be able to enter there, go all the way around and come right back to it, but that's the only in and out?
Yep.
Be that right there by.
I think you can get on it at any
You
point.
can get on at any point. And as the new parking lot is developed, there'll be additional access points there as well.
But you won't be able to enter it through the park. That's what I'm trying to get to.
No, right now the goal is to separate the park from the trail.
Yeah.
Because a lot of our renters are going to have an admission, so we want to make sure that we have one point of entry where they can collect their fees.
Okay. But the trail's going to be very popular, I can tell you right now.
It is, the trail to me is one of the most beautiful things out there along that restored shoreline. And Commissioner Dancer, I'm sure you observed it, and any of the other commissioners, if you've been out there, the number of gates, drive-through gates throughout the property, some that are electric, some that are what we call camp gates that allow us to close off specific parking areas so that when we have a theater production, a baseball tournament, something happening in the field house, we can designate specific parking areas and close off others to safeguard that parking. If there's a volleyball tournament in the field house and they need to preserve parking on the front side of the building for a theater performance, they can actually close that off and prevent cars from going in there throughout the day. And again, just tremendous planning and
I noticed those
foresight.
gates are pretty cool. But they're not manual, right? You can do them with a machine or
Some are manual, some are with almost like a garage door opener.
the theater's going to love you for that. They really appreciate that.
Absolutely.
I can tell you that right now.
Is the parking there more than adequate for the facility?
Oh yeah.
Well, what we've added,
Yeah.
you know,
What's new?
certainly we're adding 320, 350 spaces. That was a change where you just approved. You know, if you had a huge baseball tournament, you know, one of these 96 or 100 team volleyball tournaments, a swim meet, you know, something on the small stage, something on the large stage, it's going to still be tight. But the likelihood of that happening with just, we all anticipate, you know, the conflicts that can happen with over scheduling. So our staff works closely with Visit Central Florida to mitigate that ahead of time.
With some of the prohibitions that you have mentioned, such as the cleats and the sunflower seeds, how are you going to police that or prohibit persons from?
Scott changed.
From using
Commissioners, I just wanted to speak also, just kind of take a step back on the parking management and planning. So over the last year and a half, we've been working really closely with our partners at Visit Central Florida that do all of the bookings for both the Diamond Sports, which now we have with baseball, and the Fieldhouse facility. And they've actually delved into the typical attendance for not just athletes, but spectators as well for these events, so that we can, although we can't hone in on it perfectly, we can get a better estimate of what we're looking at when we have a Fieldhouse event and a ballpark event happening at the same time. Then we can also work with our partners in the theater and our team with aquatics to get a better idea. And that's what we've done, so that proactively over the next year out that we're booking, we know ahead of time typically what each of these events, whether baseball operations or Fieldhouse operations, will bring, so that we put ourselves in a better position from the get-go with parking management. And then, I'm sorry, what was your next question?
You have some prohibitions or with regards to
Seeds and cleats.
with seeds, with the sunflower seeds and that
Yes,
kind of thing, I guess to preserve the turf.
Yes, sir.
So, and that's vitally important. My question is, how do you police that? How do you keep
We'll
that?
have staff. Staff will be out there. A lot of the benchmark groups that we spoke to don't staff until there's a certain threshold of people that are coming, expected to come to facilities, or a certain amount of teams and tournaments. We staff always. That's to take care of not only the people at the event, but our amenities as well. And so we'll have roaming staff that will be present, that we have trained and worked with on what we're looking out for, and also just a way that we can talk to our partners about how we can prevent that. And we've worked with Visit Central Florida that when we have tournament operators like the group that's coming in December, we've already alerted them. We've gotten notification out to them, to the coaches, to the teams that are going to be attending. So we front load that communication as well. Hey, this is your turf grass. This is not your natural grass. These are the things that we will not be allowing, so that we don't have any parents, or hopefully we've done as good as a job as we can to front load that communication, so we don't have anybody upset when they come in the park.
There's also a wide variety of signage
Correct.
throughout
Yeah,
the
we've
entire park.
Covered.
Security. So for events, how do you manage that?
Security, you mean like our partners in police department, or?
Yes, and who actually will the police department be there with some regularity with the events?
So what we do is we put out a notification to our teammates in PD, and if we have an event that is going to draw a certain amount of people, and we have thresholds that we have for each of these spaces, then we ask for increased presence. If there is an event at the Fieldhouse that requires police presence, we know that they're just across the parking lot if we do need them. But we work with them on a weekly basis to establish where we're going to have higher than normal groups of people. And especially since this is a new amenity for us, we're working again to front load that communication and planning.
In addition, Commissioner Dawson, when this facility is not in use, it's secured. It's locked down, because you don't want to, these are multi-million-dollar fields that you have out there, and somebody gets out there randomly that doesn't want to pay attention to the rules, can cause a tremendous amount of damage. So we can lock down that entire facility, and then you also have cameras throughout that allow us to monitor.
The large green space, Julie, what potential can that be used for?
So we're hoping that can serve as an open space for play for the community. We could program that space for movie nights on the green, things of that nature. Nothing super athletic or recreational will be programmed in that space, but more of an environment for people to congregate and come together. If there's a tournament, maybe both of our facilities have tournaments, or there's just a lot going on the space. That could be a picnic area. That could be a space for younger kids to go play while older kids are playing the organized sports. So a sense of neighborhood and belonging can happen there.
No vehicles or anything on that space, is it?
Other than our own vehicles that we would use, special purpose or golf carts or something like that for maintenance, our Toros, we would not allow vehicular traffic through that area.
And is there special lighting for that now, or is it to be added?
That is in future plans. That is not going to be currently a lighted area.
Quick question, Julie. Do you have large vacuum cleaners? Since there's no clay out there, y'all going to vacuum that place? Is that how you're going to clean it? Or are you going to just sweep it? Or 'cause
Do you have a
it's-
contact at Hoover, or what are you saying?
No, I'm just sitting there thinking there's no clay. So how are you going to, clean up those things once in a while?
So we have some specialized equipment that the team has gotten specialized training on that do the cleaning and the required maintenance to keep the turf up to where it should be for the maintenance and use that it's going to get. And we're working on, and I actually have Steve and Mike Schimmel with Athletic Fields and Parks and Grounds here tonight. If you have any super specific questions, because they won't let me drive it yet. But it is prescribed maintenance that's done to ensure that the infill is redistributed correctly after a certain amount of hours, so that actually just kind of talking about how much we love what we do. I was talking, where is he? Back there, Mike Schimmel. He was saying that even during construction, some of the guys that are on the either construction team or something may have had seeds, and he was out there picking them up with his hands to make sure that they didn't get into the turf, because this is our new baby and we want to keep it new as long as possible. So there is equipment and there's attachments to this equipment that we have that's specialized to be able to clean, treat, and preserve the turf.
I guess curiosity, turf, is it much faster? Does it create a much faster game?
It depends. It depends on how well, if what you're comparing it to. If you're comparing it to natural turf, it depends on the speed of the clay, what the clay is made of. I mean, there's a lot of determinants that go into that. It can be a faster game, yes, but it's also a consistent playing surface, which is desired in most areas.
Is it water doesn't create more hazard to it when if it's raining or?
It has a drainage system built within each of the fields, built underneath. And so that's one of the beautiful parts of having this artificial turf, is that the rain doesn't slow us down. Yes, sir.
Fantastic. When is that going to be completed?
December 3rd is when we have our ribbon cutting.
Okay.
And our first tournament starts 2 days later. We waste no time.
Fantastic. Exciting.
Anything else?
Nope. Ready to move on to ordinances first reading if you are. So, and I'll ask Eric to help me with this, but your first ordinances are 2536 and 2537. This is VMAR Dev LLC and Cunningham Investors LLC are the petitioners. They're requesting to amend the future land use map on a parcel and portion of another parcel from neighborhood suburban future land use to neighborhood support land future land use, and to rezone that same parcel and a portion of another parcel from PUD zoning to commercial highway C3 zoning. This total is 46.21 plus or minus acres. This is located in the Villamar subdivision, located at the northeast corner of the intersection of Thompson Nursery Road and Cunningham Road. What you're seeing is the Thompson Nursery Road realignment coming through there. And the Cunningham Road, you can see, that used to be referred to as Rialto Drive, I believe it was. That was renamed by the commission several months back. So the petitioners propose to develop this portion of the property with commercial uses as opposed to residential. A maximum of 5,118 square feet of commercial could be developed on this site. Surrounding property, or the subject property, is located north and south of Thompson Nursery Road realignment, which is an arterial road that when completed in 2030-31 will ultimately connect from US Highway 27 to the intersection of Highway 17 and State Road 540. Uses surrounding the property include lake grass and drainage and retention to the north, as you can see there. Lake Reed and the Terra Nova subdivision to the east, and the Terra Nova and Villamar subdivisions to the south, and the Villamar subdivision to the west. We included in your packet information on the infrastructure. The neighborhood support future land use is consistent with the property's frontage on an arterial road in close proximity to the intersections with collector roads. The requested C3 zoning district is consistent with that neighborhood support future land use designation. Planning Commission heard this on November 3rd during their regular meeting and voted to recommend approval. There were 2 members of the public that spoke with concerns about traffic, flooding, and potential crime. Staff's conclusions were that the neighborhood support future land use and C3 zoning district is consistent with the property's frontage on an arterial road in close proximity to the intersections with collector roads, and that the city's 2035 comp plan encourages commercial uses to focus into nodes centered around key intersections within the city. Further supporting this request is the presence of 1,792 residential units in the Villamar subdivision alone, and the presence of 1,000 plus additional housing units within a short distance. The proximity of those neighborhoods to this proposed development has the ability to reduce the number and the length of vehicle trips onto the surrounding roadway network through a more compact development pattern. And there is sufficient infrastructure capacity to accommodate the maximum theoretical development under C3. One of the things we talked about in the strategic planning process and that we underwent in 2024 was when you have development, when you can put commercial nodes with that to create more of that quasi-village concept so people aren't having to travel as far to access commercial. I don't know that we have any sense of what would go within this commercial property as of yet, but its proximity along Thompson Nursery Road's realignment, as well as proximity to the residential around there, makes sense in terms of supporting all of that traffic and residential activity.
Okay.
Eric, was there anything beyond that that we know with this property?
No, sir, I think you nailed it.
And the next one is just dealing with the zoning.
Yes, sir.
So that's straightforward. So go to 12C.
This is a little unusual. So this is an amendment to the Winter Haven Code through Ordinance 2539. It's in response to the condominium building collapse that happened in Surfside, Florida. As you recall, the Florida legislature passed legislation addressing the safety of condominiums and cooperative association buildings with the passage of House Bill 913. That occurred during the 25 legislative session. That bill requires local governments to add language to their code addressing structural repairs for condos and cooperative association buildings within a specified time frame. To comply, Section 5-24 will be added to Chapter 5 of the city's code. This section will require those condominiums and cooperative associations which are required by law to perform milestone inspections to schedule or commence repairs for substantial structural deterioration within 365 days of the building official receiving a Phase 2 inspection report. There are 7 condominium and cooperative associations located in the city which are subject to milestone inspections. These are those that contain buildings of 3 or more habitable stories in height, which are required at 30 years of age and every 10 years thereafter. So we have 7 buildings here within Winter Haven that fall within the requirements. So staff's recommending the commission approve this ordinance that will amend the current code.
Any questions? All right. Next one.
The next 3 pertain to ordinances that speak to budget amendments. So the first one being 2540. This is kind of a special one. The city received a bequest in the amount of $258,879.07 from the estate of Velma Sewell Daniels. Velma Daniels is a longtime resident of Winter Haven. Had a business just to the north or to the east of us here at City Hall, the Art Cottage. She was also an avid supporter of the Winter Haven Public Library. So to properly record this contribution, the current fiscal year budget will be amended to reflect an increase in the library fund other contributions revenue account and make the funds available for library-related expenditures within the library fund. So staff recommends the commission adopt the ordinance 2540, which will amend that budget in the amount of $258,879.07 and increase the library's funds other contributions revenues account offset by a corresponding increase to the materials expenditure account. So Ms. Daniels thought very highly of the library, and in her will upon her passing, a significant portion of her estate went to Winter Haven Public Library.
Yeah, that's a big gift. It really is. But I want to make sure I understand. It's not going into is it going into like the general fund for the library, or is it going to the foundation?
It doesn't go to the Friends, it goes to the library.
No, we have a foundation. that's managed by GiveWell over in Lakeland that was started.
No, this comes directly to the city.
That's what we left.
Jane, do you know if it goes to, does it go into the, is it going to be used for just for regular daily operations for the library, or is it going to be for special projects? And because there's a big difference. The foundation has about $1 million in it. It's run by GiveWell, and they give us money for the bookstore and stuff.
We won't use this money just for our regular, at least that's not our hope. So we're kind of exploring what we can do now to kind of honor her, the spirit. Definitely, she was a supporter of literacy, of writing, and just arts in general. So we don't have any definite plans for it because, again, it was an unexpected windfall, but
But it's not going into the foundation. It's what I'm trying to get to.
No, how she set it up in her will, it went directly to the city. That would have been something they would have had to do before the will was written to have
Right.
the estate planning.
Okay. Well, the foundation was started years ago by Strangs. Well, Carl Strangs started it with $250,000 probably 20 years ago when his wife died, or maybe 30 years ago. I don't know. And it's grown to $1 million, and we get money off it every year to fund Friends of the Library and other things. It's been a really big boon for the library. A lot of people give money to it, not just a Strange. That's how it started. And I wasn't sure if that's what her intention was, to have it go into there. So it doesn't sound like she delineated that in her will or something. So
We reviewed this, and I know CJ is here too, but it was a bequest specifically to the city of Winter Haven.
There's, I think the very last attachment, it's a dissolution of her estate.
Yeah.
And it specifically says the Winter Haven Library. So, yeah.
the foundation's a library, and so is, I mean, there's a lot of, I don't know, I'm not going to argue with you. I'm glad we got the money. I'm just curious, because most people, when they bequeath money to the library, they put it in the foundation versus giving it to the general fund. But it
Yeah.
doesn't sound like that's what she did.
She's pretty specific.
I think my concern is, I think what Commissioner Dantzler is alluding to is, I don't want the funds to get lost in the general fund. And so over time, the money's sitting there and it's used for this little project and that little project, and then there's no substance. So I don't know if is that what?
That's what I'm getting
Well-
to.
Yeah.
If it goes in that foundation, it's preserved and it's managed properly.
Are we
So-
keeping it as like a separate GL within the
So,
general fund, or?
It's not in the general fund at all. The
For the
library
library.
has its own specific fund. And if it's not spent in the current year, the 258,000, it goes into the library's restricted fund balance. So it'll specifically stay there.
And I don't mean the general fund. I get it. I meant the general fund for the library, I guess. Yeah.
And, you have a library board, you have staff that are looking at this, they see it as, as Jane said, this is a very unexpected windfall. What can be done to enhance the opportunities and the programs that were near and dear to Ms. Daniels, whether that's through capital investments into the building or specific assets and equipment to foster her interests. I have confidence that between Jane's leadership of the library and the guidance of your library board, that they will not use that for paying electric bills and things like that.
There really wasn't any great restrictions relative to it for the most part, was it? It was left at their discretion to utilize.
It was, in fact, it was part of the, if I remember correctly, it was part of the residuary of whatever, the total was. Just as a matter of discussion, and my discussion is a little bit froggy today, so I apologize. In the future, the city commission, if that's something you want to do, and the use of those funds are up to the city. So, the city working with the city commission, city manager working with city commission, you could come up with, not if you wanted to, but right now I think the ask is to allow it to be recognized as a receivable, or as funds.
Again, it's a beautiful gift, and I just think if we put some of it in the foundation and not all of it, I don't know. It's not up to me anymore. So I'm just saying, I just think it'd be a good thing to do, because once it's in that foundation, it's used from now until eternity, because it's managed properly, and a certain percentage comes off to support various things. So But that's not for me to decide. That's somebody else. But I just, you could. I mean, the library could do that if they wanted, but you probably don't want to because it restricts the money. But whatever. I'm just saying. It's thank you, Velma. I knew
Yeah.
Velma well, and I appreciate that. I had no idea that was coming.
We work closely with, I think, Mr. Mark Turner was the, who handled that estate. And the city was one of 5 entities that, the city's library was one of 5 entities that she spoke and felt very highly of to include in her will.
When I first got elected, Velma had no problem calling me up and giving me a hard time about what we were doing down here.
I
This is back
remember well.
she was on me all the time about stuff. So
Next item is another ordinance amending the fiscal year that ends September 30th, 2026. So pursuant to Florida statutes, the commission may amend the budget by ordinance to appropriate and expend funds that are not anticipated in the original approved budget. Purchase order roll forwards represent contractual or encumbered obligations that were approved in fiscal year 24-25, but not fully expended by the end of the year. In accordance with established accounting standards and budgetary control procedures, these encumbrances have been reestablished into fiscal year 25-26 budget to ensure proper accountability for prior year commitments. The total value of the roll forward purchase orders affects current year budget. However, this action does not constitute new spending. So this is money that was set aside for projects that may have been advanced in the prior fiscal year or had not yet been advanced. The dollars are encumbered for that. Since those projects haven't been completed, those dollars roll forward and are available to finish those projects. The total budget amendment of $58,118,080.31 reflects outstanding encumbrances as of September 30th, 2025. The amendment increases the current year's budget across various funds with corresponding funding from prior year's available fund balances. If you have time, and certainly I would encourage you to look at the attachment. I think it's designated as Exhibit A. It will show you the dollar amounts by specific fund. You'll see that the utility fund has the largest portion of these at $28.5 million. Those are major projects that are underway that are funded in a year to advance them, but they're not able to be completed within 1 year. But most of these are tied to projects such as the Winter Haven Recreation and Cultural Center, Fire Station 5, lift station rehabilitations, water treatment plants, HVAC equipment installations at the Florida Citrus Building, certain equipment purchases, and the list goes on and on. But these, again, are projects, equipment purchases, tasks that are underway that we started in 24-25 did not complete. So the funds that were assigned to those efforts carry forward as the project continues. Any questions with that?
Any questions?
And then the last one is probably more familiar to you. And I'll tell you on that last one, particularly for Mayor Birdsong and Commissioner Dantzler, you probably didn't see that as much in years prior. It wasn't until CFO Scott joined our team that we began using an encumbrance process for our budgeting and accounting. Hence, that's why over the past 2 years, we now have that ordinance required. The last one, 2542, this is appropriating funds for fiscal year ending September 30th, 2025. So again, per Florida statute, city can amend its budget within 60 days of fiscal year end. As part of the review of fiscal year 24-25, staff evaluated expenditures to ensure adequate budget authorization existed within the fiscal year in which costs were incurred. During this process, it was determined that several projects required budget adjustments to fully fund expenditures. So the amendments are detailed in Exhibit A, and those are necessary to align budgetary expenditures with actual activity and to maintain compliance with GASB requirements in the city's financial policies. These changes correct budgetary shortfalls identified during the year-end closeout process and ensure city records accurately reflect authorized expenditures of funds. All budget amendments pertain to the prior fiscal year and are limited to the reallocation of existing resources with and between funds. No new or additional funding is required, and there's no financial impact to the current fiscal year's operation. So again, if you review item or exhibit A, you'll see that some of this, the first one is transfer of logistics parkway from water and sewer to the transportation fund. You're moving money between two funds. That requires a budget amendment. South Lake Howard Nature Park, there are certain funds that are moved into that from impact fees and the general fund for sidewalk improvements. We're getting all those funds. It's all city dollars, but we're getting them into the proper fund for where those projects live. There is one for the motor pool project, Amendment 1, motor pool road project, Lake Elbert crosswalk beacons. That was something we added into that project afterwards. And then the sound and AV equipment for the Winter Haven Recreation and Cultural Center, which is involving funds from the Florence Villa CRA. So just movement between the funds balances the budget out, but doesn't incur any additional new spending. And on all three of those, I do want to give just a word of appreciation to CJ and her team. Extremely well done in preparing those ordinances and the clarity of those summaries. So if you have any questions with that between now and Monday, we will be certainly prepared to answer those questions.
Any questions? All right.
Okay. New business. First item is the Grant and Aid Application Review Committee. This includes the appointment of a new member and procedural recommendations for the upcoming fiscal year, the fiscal year cycle that will be the 26-27 cycle. So on September 22nd, the commission passed Resolution 2548 that further defined the GARC structure and role. Included in that resolution was a requirement that committee vacancies be advertised by the clerk, reviewed by the city manager or designee, and a recommendation come forward to the city commission for the appointment. There's one vacancy on the committee currently, and we received 6 applications for consideration. Those are listed within your fact sheet. I reviewed all of those applications in detail. In addition, I solicited feedback from the current members of the GARC. Something that's not required within that, but I want them as members of that committee. I wanted to get their take on these applications as well. After careful review consideration, David Barry's application is being recommended for the commission's consideration of appointment. In addition to 30 years of nonprofit experience and 21 years serving vulnerable populations, specifically in Winter Haven, Mr. Barry also pledged in his application that if he was appointed, the mission of Winter Haven, of which he is affiliated, will not apply for any grant funding, allowing him to avoid any real or perceived conflicts of interest. In addition, on November 6th, the committee met to review their 26 process, review recommendations and guidance from the city attorney, and discuss potential refinements. They have 4 things that they would like to implement moving forward. One is to require that agencies applying have been in operation and providing services to Winter Haven for a minimum of 2 years at the time of application. Part of the reason for that is that we had agencies that were formed just to apply for grant funds. They were establishing nonprofits, within the month, sometimes within weeks prior to the application process in order to avail themselves to those dollars. That doesn't give the committee any sense of how they're functioning and what services they're providing. They want to expand the reporting requirements to include mandatory proof of funds spent. That speaks to funds that were previously awarded. So if an agency was awarded $20,000 the year prior, they want proof that those dollars were spent as intended and as applied for. They want to require that all submitted reporting documents be both witnessed and notarized to give them an additional level of legitimacy, and to implement an agency representative system for all public meetings of the committee. One of the things that has happened in recent years, I think Commissioner Yates, you have attended some of those meetings. That committee will be having dialogue and debating on various items with an application. And various people from the audience will come to the podium to speak on behalf of that agency who may not have anything to do with that agency. This requires the agency to designate someone that will speak on their behalf if that committee has questions. So it avoids some of the hearsay and the misinformation that can come forward. There is no financial impact with this. If it's approved, we will notify Mr. Berry of appointment, and we will modify all of our applications for the application sessions that will begin late January, early February of 26.
Question. Parking garage.
Okay, so we've been going for about an hour and 10 minutes. I don't know if you need a break before I jump into this one, because this may take a little bit of time.
Go ahead.
Okay. Let me get to it. Sorry, I pulled up the wrong one there. On October 13th of 2025, the city received an unsolicited proposal from 610 LLC, hereafter referred to as the unsolicited proposer, for the construction of a 292-space parking structure at the northeast corner of 3rd Street Southwest and Avenue C Southwest in downtown Winter Haven. AJ, would you advance the slide one for me so you can see roughly where that intersection is? Section 255.065 of Florida statutes, also known as the P3 statute, governs public-private partnerships and the process by which unsolicited proposals are received as a means by which public entities can deliver projects that serve a public benefit in a more time-efficient and cost-effective manner. A public parking structure is a qualifying project. Concurrent with the submittal of the unsolicited proposal, the applicant provided a $25,000 application fee, as provided for in the P3 statute, to cover the city's costs associated with review of the proposal and subsequent construction plans, as well as construction inspection services and any other related costs. The proposal details the unsolicited proposer's intent to design, construct, and deliver the completed parking structure to the city. The 4-story parking structure is proposed to be constructed on property currently owned by Urban Action LLC, of which the unsolicited proposer is a 50% owner. The unsolicited proposer will demonstrate control of the real property by entering into a development agreement with Urban Action LLC. The P3 statutes require that at this first duly noticed public meeting, which will occur Monday evening, the proposal be presented to the City Commission, and that affected public entities and members of the public be given an opportunity to provide comments on that proposal for the City Commission's consideration. In accordance with the statute, at a second duly noticed public meeting, which will be your first meeting in December, the City Commission will be afforded the opportunity to make certain findings in order to determine that the unsolicited proposal is in the public's interest. In making that determination at that second meeting, the Commission must consider the following factors: the benefits to the public, the financial structure of and the economic efficiencies achieved by the proposal, the qualifications and experience of the unsolicited proposer that submitted the proposal and such entity's ability to perform the project's compatibility with regional infrastructure plans, and any public comments submitted at that first meeting. At the second duly noticed meeting, city staff will prepare, in conjunction with the city attorney, an appropriate resolution for the Commission's consideration and passage, which will recite and contain the Commission's findings based on each of those aforementioned factors and constitute a report that includes the public interest determination and the factors considered in making such public interest determination. That report must be published in the Florida Administrative Register for at least 7 days. The resolution will also authorize the city manager to negotiate a comprehensive agreement with the unsolicited proposer. To assist with the review of the proposal, city staff solicited an independent third-party review from Walker Consultants. You may recall Walker Consultants conducted a downtown strategic parking and mobility master plan for the city in July of 2022. November 5th, 25, Walker delivered their independent analysis of the proposal, making the following findings. The proposed construction cost of $23,224 per space is below both the 2025 national median, which is $31,400 per space, and the Tampa region median, which is $27,224 per space. This cost is within acceptable market parameters for a turnkey fixed price delivery parking structure. The proposed soft costs are 21% of the construction cost and are within acceptable market parameters of 15 to 25%. The proposed cost of $2 million for the land on which the garage will be constructed represents 20% of the overall project cost, and when included, increases the all-inclusive cost to $35,000 per space. The proposed parking structure will occupy a portion of one parcel, leaving the parcel's existing building and some surface parking intact. Current Polk County appraised value for the entirety of the parcel is $3.319 million. Depending on whether the parcel is subdivided and to what extent prior to being sold to the city, the cost is likely within acceptable market parameters for purchase. The proposed parking structure provides a public benefit by creating additional parking space supply in a rapidly developing downtown area with significant current and planned growth. Can you advance one more for me, AJ? I believe we have an image that shows, yeah, so that'll give you a sense of what they're proposing here. Staff's review of the proposal along with the Walker Consultant independent analysis of same conclude that the proposal meets the requirements of the P3 statute and that the construction and delivery of the parking structure as proposed serves a public need and benefit, defines the financial structure and economic efficiencies to be achieved, describes the entity's qualifications and experience, and demonstrates compatibility with regional infrastructure plans. There's no direct financial impact to the city with this particular request. However, should the City Commission accept the proposal and enter into a comprehensive agreement with the proposer, the total anticipated cost for delivery of the 292 space parking structure is $10,217,496. So staff's recommendation with this item is for the commission to receive public comment with respect to the proposal and schedule a second duly noticed public meeting for December 8th, 2025 for further consideration as called for in the statute. So at this point, we're bringing forward to you the proposal. This is what they're looking to build, 292 space, 4-story parking structure at the corner of Avenue C Southwest and 3rd Street Southwest. Turnkey project. The cost of the project, if the commission desires to move forward with this, if you are in agreement that this meets a public benefit and is cost effective in terms of the delivery and the overall price, then we would advance this. I've spoken with our CFO. We have in our construction fund $4.5 million dedicated for a parking structure. Within our transportation fund, which certainly this speaks to transportation, outside of everything else that we're doing in the transportation world, there is sufficient funding to advance this project at the cost of $10.217 million without having to borrow, whether that be through bank, bond, or interfund transfers. There is funding to deliver the project. So with that, certainly entertain any questions that you may have. Eric Labby, John Murphy, and myself have worked on this for the past probably 90 plus days, making sure that everything was intact there, that the Walker study analyzed this in accordance with their prior work. There is in your packet the actual proposal from 610. It's a 43-page slide presentation that highlights all the information that I just shared with you.
Was this the little accelerated and as it relates to, I know that we had, looking to build a second parking garage, that time frame, or I don't know if that was ever really established. So did this accelerate that process a little bit?
It will certainly deliver it sooner than we could otherwise.
I mean, because there was some reasonable expectation, I'm assuming, that we would perhaps need it by a certain time, or I guess, and I don't know if that was contingent upon certain things being, well, we know another apartment building is going to be built in that area, of course. One is just completed. So, and then of course, university, having their presence there as well. So a lot of things are kind of falling into place. And I guess probably that's what I'm saying, is this accelerating that just a little bit?
I would say that it is, in the sense that, so the Walker study was done in 22, and it looked at all of the parking demands that we had in play and what was anticipated to come forward. You mentioned apartment complexes. I think it's important to note that all of the apartment complexes that have been built self-park. So they have parking on site. And as it's been explained to me, that's really paramount for them when they're going after their financing. Even though you don't have to have parking in this downtown district.
Yeah, I assume they're required to do that anyway.
But
for the most part.
their financing is going to say, listen, you're paying back your borrowing based upon rents and leases. Your ability to do that if you don't have parking is going to be hindered significantly. But what has happened in addition to that, certainly Southeastern University has moved into the Magnolia Exchange building. Bowen Yard has developed. You have Lucille's that is operating just up the street. Long term, you have areas on this property that are used presently for public parking, although it's private parking. And if those facilities develop, is they're forecasted to do, then that public access to private property goes away, and then that compounds the parking challenges that you have today. This could, to some extent, and I don't know how to calculate this, but if people are using the present parking garage and making their way down south of Avenue B, this certainly puts parking facilities in closer proximity to that. I think that it appropriately positions this structure far enough away from the existing parking structure at Avenue A and 3rd Street, so that you're somewhat strategically placed within the core of downtown, and can accommodate additional growth as it happens. Millennium Physicians just moved into the property to the east, on the east side of 2nd Street there. So certainly this enhances parking for that. That was not a project that was contemplated back in 2022, but has since come to be. So I think that we're seeing additional growth in the area that we perhaps didn't fully anticipate in 2022. You're going to have some growth, but what does that look like? So timing wise, are you going to fill it up on day one? No, but if you wait until the need is there, the land to do so may not be. And certainly the longer we wait to advance this type of project, whether it's through this unsolicited proposal or something we do on our own, the value of land, the cost of materials and construction is certainly likely to increase. When we built the parking structure, the original one in 2012, 2013, I want to say, Eric, we were somewhere, I don't know if you recall, around $3 million, $3 to $4 million. And what we're seeing through our own analysis of parking structures, that was about a $12,000 to $15,000 per space. And the cost today in the 30s to 50s per space. So those costs are just going to continue to increase over time. This is, I think, preparing for continued growth and demand in the area. And it certainly enhances the opportunities for the business community in that area by having secured, reliable, available parking.
Now, overall cost, you said that the land, the purchasing of the land costs, and then the building costs.
Right. So in the unsolicited proposal on page 15 of that document, They show the land is a $2 million value. The soft costs, so design, architecture, engineering, permitting, all those things, at 1.436 million, and the construction costs of the actual building at 6.781 million. So combined 10.217 million.
Can we, so just two comments. Number one, I just careful from the lesson that we learned on the last one. If it looks too good to be a parking garage, nobody will park in it. And I'm just not sure that, I mean, it's beautiful, but, let's make sure we put plenty of signage and directional things out there that, this is a parking garage and you can park in here. The second thing I was just curious about was, I know we don't currently restrict in the existing garage or other spaces for that matter, but can we consider implementing a no overnight parking requirement in the garage?
Well, you can set whatever. Let me answer the first question first. So the team that they had proposed to do this project, Coleman Karski is the architect. Coleman Karski is housed in the middle of downtown Winter Haven. That is the same architect from the first building, hence probably why these look very similar. I do concur that it has to have very clear markings that says, hey, this is a parking garage, not just a beautiful building. And that's easy enough to address. Contractor is Whitehead Construction, who built the very first parking garage that we have. And the precast concrete contractor for this, if I'm not mistaken, I'm looking very quickly, is, I believe, Metromont, which also Metromont, which also, I believe, was involved in our first parking garage. I need to confirm that. So these are folks that have done this type of project and have the expertise to deliver it. In terms of parking and overnight parking, we can set policy as need be for that. I don't know that we have an issue with overnight parking in our parking garage to create a problem that would warrant deterring it. One of my concerns about deterring overnight parking, someone overindulges and they're parked in that parking garage, and I can leave my car there and Uber home, or I better move my car or I'm going to get a ticket or I'm going to get towed. That's a concern that I would have. We've had that concern on surface parking, and so we try and abate that as best we can. We do offer in the existing parking garage, I believe it's on the top deck only, the availability of 24-hour reserved spaces, because there are some residential properties in the downtown, particularly on Central Avenue and the lofts that are down there, that don't have sufficient parking. And so that became of interest. We lease out spaces based upon 10% of the total allotment of spaces in there. I think any of those policies, we have the opportunity to look at those. I will say that this turnkey project does not have any expectation or mandate or requirement or condition that any of this be leased back to the unsolicited proposer. This is 292 spaces of, for lack of a better description, free and clear public spaces. If at some point the city of Winter Haven felt it was necessary, and I'm not encouraging this at this time, but if commissions down the road and managers after me think that pay for parking is essential, then they have the opportunity to do that as well. So I think all of those operational policies can certainly be sorted out based upon what's warranted.
And I think we have a degree of flexibility here insofar as the $4.5 million, if I recall correctly, was taxable. It was not.
We actually, I think, pulled that out of the bond. I think that's, CJ, can you confirm? We took that from the bond.
Right. And I think that portion of the bond, if I remember correctly, was not tax exempt, that we made it a taxable so that we had future flexibility.
But we
Is that
use
your-
those funds, we transferred them to another project
Oh, we did? Okay.
Because we're concerned about arbitrage and we had to spend that money within a certain
Got it.
period of
Okay.
time.
So we used that money from the bond to advance a separate project and used the untimed money of that separate project. We basically flipped those two. So we didn't lose any funding, but we got out of the concern for arbitrage and how we use
Okay.
the dollars.
A little bit in the weeds, and we'll sort that out as we move forward.
And I certainly understand your point on, someone has a good time and, I don't want to make, but so maybe it's a 48. I don't know the answer, but I guess
Abandoned vehicles becomes an issue. And we
Right.
certainly don't want that.
Well, and also my concern is I don't want us to get trapped into a situation, for example, like other projects that we looked at on Central Avenue that were going to potentially take, parking. And then, well, why would you need to buy a parking pass? Because you can park there overnight. Once you have this amount of parking in this space, there's not a lot, but it does make all existing ground parking more valuable because, well, I don't have to park a car there anymore on the ground. I can park a car in the garage. So just then that's kind of what's going through my head, and not that would come to fruition on this project or be anywhere near term. I'm just trying to forecast 10 years, 20 years down the road to where, well, we don't really need this ground parking anymore. And, the city doesn't get any, city just traps themselves is what I guess the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, I think you have total flexibility in all that. I think the gist of this is, in accordance with the statutes, someone has submitted an unsolicited proposal to develop a parking structure on land that they have or can attain control of. The cost is defined. The city has funds to accommodate this. Long-term, the availability of land of this particular parcel and the lack of available other lands, I think becomes something that the commission needs to consider. And the cost of acting today versus, waiting 3, 4, 5 years, I would expect that cost increases, 25+% over that same window. So, we've got the proposal. It's come forward. It's unsolicited. Hey, we're interested in delivering this project for the city. You all have the opportunity to consider that and accept information and input from affected businesses and property owners and citizens regarding that. And then if it's your second meeting, we'll have a resolution for you that if you want to move forward, that will direct me to engage in creation of a negotiation of a comprehensive agreement to advance the project. Time-wise, I think from what I understand, it'd take about 3 months to get this to construction-ready documents in all the soft costs needed on the front end, and about 7 months to construct.
The last thing I'll just add is just so my colleagues are aware up here, I will not be voting on anything to do with this, just out of an abundance of caution. My employer may be considered for financing from the developer. So just out of an abundance of caution, I think it's best for me to not vote on this item.
And we've looked at that to buttress what Commissioner or Mayor Pro Tem Yates has said, we being myself and Drew Crawford, and we've examined some of the ethics opinions, and we think that this is a situation where the Mayor Pro Tem ought to recuse himself from voting, but it's still a permitted transaction.
And that's the
Given the
financing
separation.
of the unsolicited proposer,
Correct.
not
Right.
financing
Not-
associated
The
with
city
the
is
city.
not in any way engaged in that endeavor. So
Oh.
that,
T, is the CRA involved in any way? And this has been, clearly hasn't been in the CRA board yet or
No,
planning
sir.
commission or anything like that to give us their opinions on
No,
it?
sir.
Is the CRA going to have anything to do with this at all? as
There's
far
no
as
CRA
financing?
funding associated with it.
Well, it sounds good, looks good. I think that be curious to get the feedback and see what we get from that. And I think that'll be the way forward. But it looks really impressive. And I think that it will be a great addition to the area and enhance what we're hoping to see for the future. So great job. I commend you all for the hard work and effort that you put into trying to bring this to fruition.
Thank you, Commissioner Dawson. I have to give a tremendous amount of credit to John Murphy and Drew Crawford because P3s are very complicated. We've done one P3, and that's the res engagement we have for Bradco Farms. That's done completely different from this type of project, but these are extremely complicated transactions and processes. So they've been instrumental in helping my office navigate this.
All right. Anything else?
I think that's quite enough, sir.
All right. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.